Welcome to lesson 2 in this basic programming series, asrock.co.uk/C#, where there are more programming videos. Excuse me. Now, we've just started up a console application here. I called it console application 1, doesn't matter. And by default, we have 4 namespaces: system collection generic namespaces, a link namespace and system text namespace. We don't need these 3 for the time being, so we'll just take these out. So again, we are importing the system namespace, which a lot of .NET framework classes available, makes it available to our program. Our namespace, so C# programs consist of namespaces, classes, and functions. Here we've got a method function. Now the entry point for a C# program is the main method, and again we can pass in at the command line an array of strings separated by space. Now we've declared 3 variables of type integer: number 1, number 2 and sum. In this application we're just going to run it and we'll look through and see what actually happens here. So pressing the debug or start debugging on the standard toolbar to start to run this application, and actually it'll just run right through because, well, we want so after we've entered our variables. So let's just look here. So we've declared 3 variables: number 1, number 2 and sum, and then we're saying console.write, enter the first integer. Now the write function is an overloaded function here which takes a string argument, enter first integer, and it's a member static function, or static overloaded function, which is a member of the console class. And the console class here is available to our program because console is in the system namespace. If I were to remove that, we'd get some complaints with this console class. Can't remove it because we're in debug mode. Anyway, look at that later. Now, enter first the integer. So we're here, and we don't go to a new line because the writeLine function goes to a new line. Write just goes to the end of the line, and wait for some input. So let's put an integer in there. Let's say 8, and then hit enter. So we should have really put a breakpoint in here. I'll just run this through. So it's taken console.readline, it's read that integer and it's converted it as a string here. Console.readline turns a string and converted it to an integer and stored it in number 1 there. I wonder if it'll show me that. No, not unless I've got a breakpoint in there. And so we're down here, console.write, enter a second integer, we'll make it 7, and hit enter, and the sum is 15, and it just fell out the bottom there. So let's just stop it from running off the end by putting console.read line. That will read something in before we exit the program. Now I've put a breakpoint in here, but by clicking on here, and we'll just press F5 to run this, and we'll break out there. So let's just step through that, just make this a bit smaller, and it'll probably disappear there when we click here. Right, so F11 here, we've got a choice of F11 or F10 to step over. F11 will step into any functions that I've created, right? So it doesn't matter for the time being. F11, and we can see here, enter first integer. So if I press F11 again here, it will wait for me to input that integer. So I'll put 8 in and hit enter, and we're back here. Enter a second integer, F11. Now if I just mouse over, when we're in debug mode like this, when we've put a breakpoint in, we can just mouse over and see that number 1 has value 8 and number 2 has value 0 at the moment. But if I just press if I just go here and press I'll press F11 first, F11, and then there we go, that's the next input from the keyboard is 7. Hit enter, and you can see that number 1 is 8, number 2 is 7, and sum is 0, the default value of an integer which has not been had anything assigned to it. So once I press F11, sum will become 15, adding together 7 and 8, constant right. So sum here is passed into the position 0 in the array, and if I just look at my output there, nothing so far, and then if I just press F11 here, sum is 15. So a little bit of debugging there, you can see how it works, and we'll just stop debugging here. We can also stop debugging by pressing stop on the debug toolbar. So let's just have a look here. We've got the console, we've got the readline function which returns a string from the console input by the standard input. Here it's the keyboard, and toInt will take a string value and try to convert it to an integer. It's a member of the convert class. It's a function which is a member of the convert class, and it will and that will return an integer excuse me, and assign it to the number 2. So we can take a string from the command line, convert it to an integer, and store it in number 2. And then here we have adding together the two numbers from the console and storing them in sum. Now I could just as easily here do this. Oh no, I'll leave that till later. I won't talk too much about that. And again, the array output writeline function taking a string and the first object argument in the array. Okay, thank you for watching lesson 2, and for more lessons, introductory lessons on C#, visit asrock.co.uk/C#.